Hey, Jennifer.
Occupied right now.
Good. Okay. So tonight we are going to discuss academic language. Academic language. Language is the primary vehicle for learning, instruction, and overall intellectual development. It is not only a means for communicating information, it is also a vehicle for deepening their understanding of important ideas. Definition. Academic language is the oral and written language that students need in order to understand, read, listen, think, communicate, listen, speak, write, connect, perform, think, read, write, listen, speak, solve, and create. Academic language is necessary for the classroom students to participate in the content, to think, to question, to talk, and to learn. Demonstrating learning with academic language. When we teach a subject or any topic or text within that subject, we must teach the academic vocabulary for dealing with it, not just the words, but also the linguistic processes and patterns for delving deeply into and operating upon that content. So one of the things that we understand that EdTPA is looking for is the fact that every content area has its own language. And even though words may be the same, they don't necessarily mean the same thing in every content area. Okay? So for an example would be, if I am in health class and I tell you the word scale, what would you think of?
Getting on a weight scale.
Right, getting on a weight scale. If we're in geography and I talk about scale, what might I be talking about?
A map, maybe.
A map,
Distance.
climbing, scaling a mountain, okay? And so even though we often use the same words within different content areas, they will have different meanings. There are language demands that teachers need to consider as they plan to support student learning of content, which include language functions, vocabulary, syntax, and discourse. Ideas and structures in science. Although hydrogen is explosive and oxygen supports combustion, a compound of them puts out fires. Unless hydrogen and oxygen form a compound, they are explosive. If hydrogen and oxygen form a compound, they lose their original properties of being explosive and supporting combustion. So all of those ideas and structures could be used in a science lab report. So here are some other ones that we would use in different content areas. In English, you would have words like analyze, argue, describe, evaluate, explain, interpret, justify, and synthesize. In science, you would have analyze, explain, interpret, and justify with evidence. In math, you would have compare, contrast, conjecture, describe, explain, prove. In social studies, you would have analyze, compare, contrast, construct, describe, evaluate, examine, identify, interpret, justify, and locate. Academic language function. Language used for specific purposes. To inform, identify information, report information, describe information. Solve problems, define a problem, represent a problem, and determine a solution. Math example. A group of students measured the circumference of an exercise ball. Here are their measurements in inches: 42, 46, 45, 47, 43, 46, 46. Find the median, mode, and mean and enter your answers below. Show your work. And you can see that the student has done that. Another math example. Tom forgot to put his measurement on the list. When the students added Tom's measurement to the list, the mean and median decreased, but the mode stayed the same. What value is most likely to be Tom's measurement? Circle your choice. Notice the underlined phrase. These are academic language choices that one would make using math. Academic language functions. Explain why you chose this measurement. This can't be 47 or 46 because the mean and the median decreased. So Tom's measurement had to be less than those. Also, it can't be 45 because the mean would have stayed the same. It had to be 43. Notice the areas in blue reflect the academic language as it functions in this example. Creating learning tasks that include academic language. This is a fundamental part of EdTPA. Learning task includes activities, discussions, and other modes of participation that engage students to develop, practice, and apply skills and knowledge. Learning tasks for segment, related to a specific learning goal, connected to language function for the learning segment. Language demands, specific ways that academic language is used by students to participate in learning tasks. Now, there will be questions about this on your commentaries. Reading, writing, listening and/or speaking, demonstrate, perform. specific ways that academic language is used by students to demonstrate their disciplinary understanding. What do they know? What can they do? What can they use language to demonstrate? So these are all possible areas where you will be able to comment and note the use of academic language in your EdTPA commentaries. Communication skill, function, demands. The communication skill is the purpose or reason for communicating in a learning task. Receptive communication skills are listening, reading text, pictures, or signs. Expressive communication skills are speaking, writing, and demonstrating. Representational communication skills are using symbols, notations, gestures, or facial expressions. Communication demands within a learning task involve vocabulary, words, syntax, set of conventions for organizing words, phrases, and symbols together into structures. Social use of communication is using communication for different purposes, establishing relationships, communicating intent or emotion, participating in activities, and changing communication to meet the needs of the listener-receiver. Situational expectations are rules and conventions associated with communication in specific situations. In the academic context, this is referred to as discourse and carries expectations of the use of particular, often subject-specific terms and formats. Using complete sentences when writing reports, following particular formats for science lab reports, etc. Supporting classroom students using academic language tools. Sentence frames are tools that can help give students the words and the structures to use as they are initially developing fluency. Since the square root of blank is blank, then blank squared must be blank. Math. This blank is an important symbol for blank because blank, ELA. In the experiment, the blank acted on the blank, which caused a blank, science. The war was caused by blank, blank, and blank because blank, social studies. Discipline-specific vocabulary includes words and phrases and symbols that are used within disciplines, including words and phrases with subject-specific meanings that differ from meanings used in everyday life. For example, table, ruler, force, balance. General academic vocabulary used across disciplines. Compare, analyze, evaluate, and subject-specific words defined for use in the discipline. Example, annotate. In English, you add notes and/or comments to a text, usually explaining something or going deeper into the specific meaning, make connections, identify and/or explore key literary elements. In science, it means add brief notes to a diagram or graph. Discourse. Structures of written and oral language. How members of the discipline talk, write, and participate in knowledge construction. Discipline specific. Distinctive about features and ways of structuring language. Text structures. Common core text types. Argument, expository, informational, and narrative. Writing requires something to say, the words to say it, and the structure with which to write it. Academic language in EdTPA. Pre-service teachers are asked to select one key language function essential for students to learn within the central focus. Identify a key learning task from plans that provide students opportunities to practice using the language function. Language demands. Consider language function and task. Describe the language demands, written or oral, students need to understand and or use. So remember, what we're talking about here really is what kind of academic language do they use that is receptive and what is expressive? What do they need to hear and what do they need to use when they provide work to you or feedback to you? Language supports. Describe instructional supports that will help students understand and use language function and additional language demands. This could be anything from word walls to vocabulary lists, anything that helps with the vocabulary and with the way that words are used. Assessments. What formal and informal assessments will provide evidence of students' understanding and fluency. These don't all necessarily have to be big things. You can use structures and academic language vocabulary on an exit ticket. Academic language in EdTPA. Planning task 1, it is prompt 4, and you will need to consult in the back of your handbook rubric 4. In assessment task 3, it is prompt 3, and you will need to look at rubric 14 in the back of your handbook to see how it is going to be scored. Evidence of language understanding and use. Explain the extent to which your students were able to use or struggled to use language. Selected function, vocabulary, and additional identified language demands from task 1 to develop content understandings. So what you're going to want to show them are concrete examples from the video clips of students able to use the vocabulary, the academic language of the lessons, and also in student work samples. So you will need to provide evidence of the use of academic language or the struggle to use academic language. Academic language and commentaries. Task 1, planning. Supporting English language arts development through language. And this is language demand, language function. It may be, I'm not going to go through all of this. Look for a similar prompt in Planning Task 1 of Special Education. This is from the Elementary Education Handbook and focuses on English language arts. In our handbook in special education, you may focus on any of the academic subjects. It does not have to be English language arts. So look for that, and I'm not going to necessarily go through this. Compare uses of academic language in commentary. Candidate 1. In this learning segment, students will be supported in their use of information text features in all of the lessons. At the beginning of each lesson, students will see the academic language in their daily do-nows. Students will see the new vocabulary words in a sentence and must come up with their own definitions. In all of the worksheets and graphic organizers that students will be using, key terms will be bolded. There will also be numerous opportunities for students to discuss the terms in class. Okay, not too bad. Here's what Candidate 2 says. Throughout this learning segment, students will also be exposed to new vocabulary words in the poetry that we will read. In previous units, students have used multiple strategies, including context clues and knowledge of word parts, to break down words to determine their meaning. Students each have a list of strategies to use when they encounter unknown words in their binders for the class. They will continue to use this list for support during this unit, as well as other supports under the academic language section. I have 2 ELL students who have fairly strong academic language skills, but sometimes struggle with making sense of new vocabulary words. I plan on pairing them with other students in the class and providing guided notes to support their learning. I am using numerous instructional supports that will help students in meeting the language demand and learning about the various poetic terms and devices that they will need. I will use think-alouds and other forms of modeling when I introduce the interpretive essay. I wrote an example of an analysis essay based on a poem that we have previously covered in class, and I plan on going through the essay with students and asking them to annotate my argument and the ways in which I am using textual evidence and the poetic devices. After modeling the Think Aloud protocol, I will ask students to give their own examples from the poem and to brainstorm their own themes using textual evidence. Students will then discuss their responses in small groups. And we have more from Candidate 2. I am also introducing a limited number of terms each day so that students have the opportunity to practice using academic language in pairs, table groups, and full class discussion. I am also planning on using graphic organizers that have examples of terms, different ways in which they are used in various texts. Students will complete these organizers in small groups so that they have the opportunity to discuss the terms and language with each other. To support my ELL students and other students struggling with academic language, I will cover strategies multiple times. This will allow students multiple opportunities to practice using the language and to get feedback. I also plan on meeting with students individually to discuss their progress on the interpretive essay and to give feedback. The use of direct instruction, conferencing, graphic organizers, and peer support will all support students in using the targeted language. Okay, which one of those, and I'm sure you know, is the one that you would want to have written for your EdTPA?
Number 2.
Number 2. Why?
It was very detailed and exactly what they were doing, and it hit on every area.
Exactly. So the more detail you give, the more examples you give of exactly what you did, the better your commentary is going to be. This is not the time to take shortcuts. And more importantly, don't think that the scorer will infer what you mean if you don't spell it out. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because the scorer will not do that. The scorer is trained to look at what is there in writing. And so if it's not there, he's not going to infer that it existed. Therefore, even though prompt number 2 was, commentary number 2 was very long for me to read tonight, it's worth it because that is what we are looking for, not just in answering this particular prompt, but in all of your prompts. Do not merely repeat prompt or rubric language as your responses to commentary prompts. You must always include examples and evidence of your teaching. Provide specific and concrete examples of strengths and needs from your focus learners' prior written, oral, or demonstrated work that demonstrate and support your assertion. 2 examples in different curricular areas are as follows. Don't worry about vocational. We are not doing vocational. When tested at the beginning of the year, Terry could read 24 simple CVC words independently. By January, he was reading 62 words correctly with several self-corrects. He is now working on CVC words to reach his IEP goal of 75 CVC and CVCE words read correctly for the end of the year. Okay, so it's very specific. The only correction that I would make in that is what? What would you do a little bit differently? I'm a scorer.
Okay.
I don't know you.
Well, you want to know where they started from and then what their goal is.
Even simpler than that. What is a CVC?
Oh, well, yeah. Consonant, vowel, consonant. I guess I just knew, so
yeah. What's
the difference between CVC? Yes.
I mean, what is that? I don't know what that is.
Okay.
I'm sure somewhere in the dictionary of education anagrams and initials, it's there. But when you do write these things, make sure that at least the first time you write something, you write it out. And then you can go ahead and use it as initials. That would be the only thing that I would say, although I like yours also, where you need to give some more context to this. Tips for using academic language. highlighting academic language in lesson plans, develop script for video recordings, develop script for questioning prompts, set clear expectations for student responses using academic language. Familiarize yourself with the 4 language demands: language functions, vocabulary, syntax, and discourse. Research and observe master teaching, making notes about the use of academic language. That would be important anyway. During the first few weeks of your student teaching, not only will you be observing your own teacher, your own mentor, but you should get into other classrooms and see how other people do the same kinds of things that you might do. If you work in a resource room, be sure that you check out an inclusion classroom while you're there. The first few weeks of student teaching are going to be primarily observation. And following observation will be slowly bringing you in to actually teaching the classes. That's usually how it is. So, as promised, that was not quite as long as we usually go, half an hour. And so, Jennifer, if you have any questions, shoot.
No, I think I'm good. I'll refer back to your videos once I start doing the whole process.
Okay, and again,
they're very good.
Like the other videos, I will have this up tomorrow morning in the same spot as the other 2, and we will go from there. And I do remind you that if you go to Dr. Sid's EdTPA on YouTube, you will see other videos, 3 of which relate directly to special education. I have a video for task 1, a video for task 2, and a video for task 3. So if you're interested in that, you can go there, and it's public. You can take a look at it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm glad you were here because it's really hard to talk to myself on these things, and better and easier to have someone to talk to. Monday, hopefully we'll get a few more people, and that's it. So have a very nice evening.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too.
All right. Take care, Jennifer.
Bye.
Bye-bye.